So out of executive session. Move back to the regular agenda.
We have to report, Mr.
Yeah, could somebody summarize what we did?
You're reporting out the regular session?
Reporting out to the regular session what transpired in the executive session. I would say the
Attorney, no, Attorney Williams.
we discussed personal matters and legal matters.
I'm sorry?
We're trying to get the language to report out of executive session.
That we discussed the cases where the board has made decisions or the status of those cases with the system. And those cases were the Levin Sorrow matter as well as the Mary Duggan matter.
Okay. Let the record show. Or do I have to repeat it?
I think the record could so reflect.
Okay, let the record
But
show.
it should also reflect that we were discussing alternative investments and we have agreed to assign that to the board retreat because that's an issue that we have not resolved and we will discuss it at the board retreat. Also, that should be in the record too.
Okay. Let the record so reflect. Okay. So we have two items in regular session. Who speak to those items?
Which is the first one, may I ask?
Approve the policy committee's recommendation that management be given flexibility with leases and security for GVI leases.
Yes, and I will speak to that. We discussed at length in the policy committee meeting to give the administrator, Mr. Nibs and his team, flexibility.
Somebody to open mic someplace. Go ahead.
Okay, I have some background. If okay, hold on 1 second for me. Okay, thank you, Mr. Barwi. So I would report that we need to approve the decisions of the policy committee recommending that the administration has flexibility to deal with all leases with the caveat that any leases with the government would have a provision like a lockbox in it. And I would ask Attorney Smith to explain that to the members and the Board of Trustees so that it could be clear what we approved in the policy committee.
Okay.
Okay.
Attorney Smith.
I'm gonna make sure I can quote what Mr. Dorsey wanted. What basically Mr. Dorsey wanted was to have payments like a security deposit for the rental payments, if that's my understanding, so that they would never be behind in the rental payments. And that's what he's asking us to attempt to negotiate in future negotiations for the leases with the government. Is to basically negotiate a security deposit. He didn't specify whether it would be 1 or 2 months, so that we would have money in advance so they would never be behind on the rental payments. Mr. Dorsey can correct me if I stated that wrong.
Did anybody
Yeah.
check? Did anybody
Yes,
check?
I was,
Did anybody check to see whether that's permissible for government agencies?
No, we didn't. And I guess that's something we would have to discuss with the agencies at the time. I don't know if it's even possible if, they can do
Yeah.
that.
That's something you need to check.
Yeah, and additionally,
I'm not sure. I'm not sure whether that's permissible. Remember, you need an appropriation to make those kinds of payments. So that's something you need to check.
yeah, and additionally, Ms. Clendenon had a new provision with the government leases that needs to be explained. Ms. Clendenon?
Good morning, trustees. Again, the Property and Procurement has explained when we were negotiating a current government lease that they are requesting in those new leases going forward that there's a purchase order is what they call it, for the lease amount, so they can ensure that the agency is able to pay what the lease is asking for. So that is something the government is doing going
Yes.
forward.
And so with that caveat, Mr. Chair, we approve the administration through the CEO, Mr. Nibbs, and our attorneys to negotiate leases with the private sector with whatever flexibility they need, and with the government providing for what was said with Mr. Dorsey, if it's permissible, and what Ms. Clendenon said, the government leases moving forward will have that provision. So we asking the board to adopt that as our proposal for leases going forward.
And
can I just say something, Chair, for clarification? It is well known that for central government agencies, just for example, during the budget process, and this happened a couple of years ago, when it comes to the utility portion of the bill, which we discussed in the policy committee meeting, those are payments are assigned to going from, I guess, O and B or finance between those two agencies. And for those central government agencies, those payments for the utilities is going directly to WAPA. So I was saying we could do something similar for the GERS. Utilities are not separated.
Is that a factual statement?
Yeah, that's a factual statement. I think somebody mentioned it in the meeting. I don't know if it was one of the councils mentioned it in the meeting. That's what the process is now. That's what's happening where, and I think that came under.
I don't think that's true.
I think it came under either this governor or this finance chair as a way to cut down on the outstanding debt that the agencies owed the Water and Power Authority. It didn't happen under your watch, I agree, but I think that's what's in place now.
Correct.
Is it in place that the agencies could pay WAPA directly? That is not true.
I didn't say the agencies. I said that the budgets for the agencies, how it's set up now, and it's in the law, right? That when their budgets come to either O and B,
If you're talking about what
payment for the utility portion of the budget for all those agencies, right? That payment now is going directly to the Water and Power Authority. All I was saying, we can do a similar setup.
that is not true. So I mean, you have to start from there.
Well, you can correct it. If you know the truth, if you know how the payment is getting, the only point I'm making, right? The payment is now going to the Water and Power Authority.
Well, you keep saying that if you start from a false premise, what the purpose of going for the argument?
Are you ready to correct me or are you going to repeat?
correct you? I don't know what else you want me to say. I know that what happens is that there's a fund called the utility fund that the appropriations are going to, but it doesn't go to WAPA. The agencies have to go through that fund to finance committee, to finance department. There's no direct payments to WAPA
Oh, that's not my understanding.
ahead of time.
Maybe someone else can bring it up because it did come up in our meeting. I didn't bring that up initially, but what I did bring up is that that's something that we can look into as a way of cutting down on what is being paid out on monies we don't owe. But somebody did bring it up.
I did, trustee. Thank you.
I stand to be corrected, and if somebody could explain to me where and how and when that happened.
It's just a line item in the budget specifically for utility. It's line item so that the organizations don't use the money for other things to ensure that WAPA gets payment. So it's a line item in their budget.
Yeah, but WAPA still have to bill for it.
Of course, of course.
And they could only be paid from that line item. So it doesn't go directly to the utility.
What we have now, Chair, is not working.
Well, okay. So what you're proposing ain't gonna work either.
Well, it's a start, and I think it can work. We just have to sit down and figure it out. This may not be the forum for it, but we have to sit down and figure it out. One of the suggestions came that when the administration sits down, the next time they go to negotiate the contract, they will look to put some type of language in there to address the issue. As you know, when I first came on, one of the issues was all the utilities are grouped together. I think the cost was like 400 and something thousand to separate the utilities at that time. Of course, that price is going to go up now with this economic boom we're in as far as construction. But that didn't happen. But if we continue to do the same thing, we're going to continue to get the same results. So this was just something we proposed. So however we can make it work, we need to at least look into it. We don't need to be saying it's this and it's that. We just need to try to figure it out. That's what we're here for.
Any other thing?
Let me make a motion that we adopt what was stated in the policy committee, which was to give the administrator and his team flexibility, complete flexibility, negotiate the private leases and to negotiate the government leases, that the provision suggested by Ms. Clendenon coming from property and procurement be included in all our government leases, and that the administration, the CEO and his team would explore the issue about the WAPA issue stated by Mr. Dorsey. I so move.
So just one question. Well, I guess we need to get a second for discussion.
Seconded.
Okay, so does that mean that when you say they approve, they given the flexibility, does that mean they don't come back to the board for approval?
I don't expect them to come back to the board.
No matter what no matter what the money amount, dollar amount involved is?
Well, if you want to, I trust that they have the best interests of the system in negotiating these leases. When we discussed it in the policy committee, they were very forthcoming with what their interest is. So I agree that we don't need to have them come back to the board to approve those private leases for sure. And when they find out what the government could provide, whether it's in legislation or not, I think they need to come back to us with that. But I don't want to get in the weeds regarding leases and, you know, with these private owners of businesses in Havenside particularly, and with other stuff. But, you know, if you want to amend the motion, that's good. That they come back for approval, I have no problem with that.
I mean, personally, I don't necessarily want the board to get involved in the weeds either. But I think there should be at least some dollar value that says any lease amount that has an annual value about some number has to be approved by the board.
Okay, I could agree with that. I could agree with that.
As long as the lease that they're negotiating is below that threshold, fine, they just go ahead and do it. I mean, that'd be my suggestion. And I don't know
Well,
I don't know what the dollar amount.
I could agree with that. I don't think the members in our committee would disagree with that. So we would amend. What is the threshold that you would suggest?
Right. I would have figured you would ask me that. I mean, I think do you have a spending limit, Mr. Nibs, that you could spend? Without,
I have a question, Chairman Bowie, before Mr. Nibs answer the question.
right.
What's in place currently now? My understanding is the only thing we're actually changing is that at some point, because of the fiscal situation of the system, the management was restricted to not negotiating leases beyond a 1 year, beyond a term of 1 year. My understanding through the whole discussion in the policy committee meeting is all we were doing was extending or removing that 1 year lease. I mean, the 1 year cap in terms of the length of the lease. I mean, that's my understanding. So I kind of blindsided with the whole, if you have to come up to the board and, you know.
I mean, we know that. I mean, I kind of with you on that one. I mean, that was kind of, it wasn't clear to me what was being different here than what we're doing. And we know the reason we had imposed the 1 year limit is because of the pending insolvency. You recall that at the time that we were predicted to go insolvent within 24 months. But we could get back, we could just simply vote to remove that restriction. I mean, and go back to. So, Mr. Let me hear from the staff. I mean, what was the concern?
I think Member Carlwood was right. We discussed the length of the leases.
You're mute, Mr. Nibs. Mr. Nibs, you're mute.
That's what I said. Trustee Carlwood was correct.
Okay. So can we accomplish what you guys attempted to accomplish by just removing the 1 year restriction?
Yes. And most of the tenants would like you to remove it. I mean, casino.
Me too. Me too. I'd rather lock them in for 5 years than 1.
Well, that's why the language was to give management the flexibility to negotiate.
Well, so we just, all you got to do is remove the 1 year restriction.
And give management the flexibility to negotiate price.
Well, we already had the ability to negotiate price. So all you really need to do is remove the restriction that you had for the 1 year. And then it would go back to the same way it was before.
Okay, so you're saying a different motion have to come forward?
No, the way it's written on the agenda is the way it should be.
That's what I thought, but I could stand corrected,
But
No, correct. It's fine the way it's on the agenda.
okay.
But are there caveats to that, Trustee Russell? Isn't that what
the caveat is the government? The government
leases.
The caveat was the government leases, which I think Member Clendenin cleared up and Member Dorsey wanted certain language included if we could get it included. So that's the only caveat. And, you know, I thought the motion would cover everything, but, you know, in discussion, it may be unclear. So
let me ask Mr. Nims and Attorney Smith. The language that's here in this proposal works for you guys?
Yes, because it's basically what we have been doing for the last several years until the board put the restriction on it for 1 year.
Okay. I mean, that's what I thought when I saw this. I wasn't clear what it was. So I guess we could just simply adopt this, or we could just simply remove the 1 year restriction.
Well, it was already moved and seconded. I'll get it to the vote. Done.
Good point. Good point. So let's
It was,
let's take the vote.
it was seconded by Carwood, right?
Dorsey.
Dorsey.
But again, let's be clear, but the motion that Trustee Russell made was more than what's written on the agenda. As I understand it, his oral motion expanded the language that's on the agenda. Now, if he wants to withdraw that, that's fine. But that was not the motion wasn't simply what's written on the agenda, but he can clarify.
I picked up Trustee Russell went on and on and on. And then finally, I picked up verbatim what he said and put it on the agenda. He mentioned security for the GI leases and to give management the flexibility. That's what it was. Simple.
But Mr. Nims, I'm talking about what the motion was today.
Oh, well, I'm just saying, you can't be changing the motion. The motion is on the agenda. What was picked up from the policy from the meeting?
Okay, so let's.
Okay, so let's just let Trustee Russell just withdraw his motion. We state the motion exactly as it is on the agenda. We second it, we vote on it. On to the next.
Let's go. I withdraw my oral motion and we use the motion that was on the agenda, which includes the, you know, the government as it states. So let's move with the motion that's on the agenda. Make it simple.
Let me, Trustee Russell, let me read the motion.
Yeah.
I move to approve the policy committee's recommendation that management be given the flexibility to negotiate leases and security for GVI leases. I so move.
Yes. Second.
Trustee Carwood,
Yes.
Trustee Dorsey,
Yes.
Trustee Liger, absent. Trustee McDonald, absent. Trustee Russell,
Yes.
Trustee Smith, absent. Chairman Barry,
Yes.
4 yes, 3 absent. I need another motion
For the second.
for the Haven site.
Mr. Chair, I move that we approve the policy committee's recommendation that management be given the flexibility to negotiate leases for the Haven site mall. I so move.
Second.
Trustee Carwood,
Yes.
Trustee Dorsey,
Yes.
Trustee Liger, absent. Trustee McDonald, absent. Trustee Russell,
Yes.
Trustee Smith, absent. Chairman Barry,
Yes.
4 yes, 3 absent.
Okay. I think that concludes our agenda.
Yes. And before the conclusion agenda, I want to say that we need to get our members to participate in these meetings. I think we're moving forward pretty good, regardless of the discussions. The discussions are very fruitful, people could respectfully disagree, but we need our members to know what's happening. So I think we need some kind of push to get members to participate in our meetings, because every time Mr. Bowie, you ask for member, nobody say nothing. And I'm concerned about that. So before we close this meeting, I think we need to get members to participate in these meetings. Maybe we need to circulate it to the members. We got over 8,000 members. They need to be saying something. So I'll close with that. Thank you very much, Mr. Bowie.
I would just add to that, Chair, that I'm in agreement with Trustee Russell in terms of the level of participation for 16, 17,000 members. We barely have anybody showing up, and we don't have no retiree basically speaking or active. I'm not sure if it's because of the 3.8 billion, because even prior to that, wasn't that much coming. I think it's the venue. I think we need to change the venue. The internet is one thing, but I think we need to change the venue. I'm not sure if it should be on the government channel, Senate channel, or the public station, but I think we need to change our venue. Just my thoughts, recommendations for the record.
Okay.
You may want to consider town hall meetings.
Any other comment?
Yeah, well, I like town hall meetings, Mr. Nibs, and TV. The government channel could accommodate us, because we discussing a lot of money and nobody ain't even contributing as a member. I concern about that. So I like town hall, and whatever we could do to get that increased membership participation, let's do it. Thank you.
Okay. I think one of the things we could do to help, go along with the help, is to streamline our meetings. I think our meetings get out of control. They run random, they last for 4.5 hours. I've been on every board they have in the Virgin Islands, and none of them have meetings last 4.5 hours on a regular basis. None. So I think that's one of the turn off in the participation, and I think one where we could think about what to do to get more members is to get some feedback from those who have listened and find out what they think about it. Now, ask them what is it that turned them off, because when I first started on this board, we used to have quite a few members. Wasn't anywhere close to 16,000, obviously, but I think the feedback I get from people who listen is, they get turned off for the conduct of the meeting. So, and part of what we need to do is to become more efficient, and I guess that responsibility falls on my shoulder. But my personal take is that we've been an effective board in the sense that we get things done eventually, get the big things done eventually. We just take a long circuitous and sometimes just go out to get there. And I think that's the biggest turn off we have, or the biggest obstacle we have in getting members, especially when we start get to a point where we go to in-person meetings. I guess when we're expecting people to show up to the meetings. I think we have to be more. We have to be very respectful of people's time. So that's my take on it. And with that, I'll entertain a motion for adjournment.
Mr. Chair, move that we adjourn today's board meeting. I so move.
Second.
Roll call.
Bellwood,
Yes.
Trustee Dorsey,
Yes.
Trustee Liger. Absent. Trustee McDonald, absent. Trustee Russell,
Yes.
Trustee Smith, Absent. Chairman Barry,
Yes,
4 yes, 3 absent.
thank you all very much. Thank you, staff. Thank everybody. Enjoy the rest of your day. Thanks.
Thank you.